I never had very little contact with actual pilots that were going out. We did visit a couple of bases of the Lancasters, but even though you didn't know these people personally, when you were bringing these bombers back from their raids, and you had a list of all the bombers that went out, and their numbers and everything, and you'd be waiting and waiting and waiting sometimes for, oh, Robert hasn't returned, and we'd be waiting for that. And although as the crew of that bomber, you warned them nevertheless. And it was sometimes they turned up at another station, and we'd be told that, and that was great. The fires in the Dockland area, which was one of the poorest areas in London. I mean, the fires burnt there for days, and people were completely and utterly hopeless. And the thing was, there wasn't that much to give them, to shelter them and to feed them, and it must have been horrific. And I think the people in the services were well off, because we didn't have to. I think the civilians had a really hard war, a really hard war. I mean, there were many cities, Coventry, all these cities that were bombed, and they had, that was really horrendous. Yeah. I can't imagine what it was like in London, night after night, waiting for the air raid sirens to go, and going down to the underground shelters, and particularly the mothers with children, because the children didn't really realize what was going on to them. It was, I think it was quite a playtime. Another hard point would be when they evacuated their children. That must have been a terrible decision to have to make. Do you keep your child in this danger? And I mean, it was dangerous. There were thousands of casualties in London, thousands. And or do you send them to the country, to somebody that you don't know? That must have been a very difficult decision for people to have made. A lot of mothers in England who had teenage daughters had made arrangements with their doctors that if we were invaded, they would be given something to give their daughters, so that there would be they would just go out. Because of the raping and the horrors that were going on, a lot of mothers were very, very protective and very scared of what would happen to their teenage daughters if there was an invasion. So I think probably the biggest thing that the mothers would have had to cope with was the rationing. Now, I've heard people in Canada say, how awful the rationing was and that sort of thing. They had absolutely no idea of what the rationing was like in England. I mean, they got 1 egg per month, perhaps. That was if it was available. You got 2 ounces of sugar a week. You got half a pint of milk, which I think is, 250 milliliters or something, a day. Now, I will say that the government looked after pregnant women and babies. Pregnant women got extra rations. The babies got free orange juice, free what they call national milk, which was a formula. And I think Britain had some of the healthiest babies at the end of the war, as any country. They really did. I mean, there's so much violence today. And why? Are people very insecure, or I don't know what it is, but I mean, it used to be if you really disagreed with somebody, you could go down and club them. Now they pull a knife or a gun. With the idea of killing, not with the idea of just putting a point across with a good thump, but of actually injuring that person. And I just don't. To me, it's very upsetting to see a country, and not just a country, but a world that is so violent, so violent. I think it's important for the young people to realize that the peace isn't just something that's out there. It's something that's in here. And that if you can be a peaceful person within yourself and peaceful within your family, and it's like throwing a pebble into a pond. You get yourself that go out and out and out. And it does, it does spread, and it really does start with one person, you personally, and how you behave. And it does spread into the family, into the school, into your community.